welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And me, Robbie.
And here we are, straight from the cinema, 28 inches later.
Yeah. Yeah, and usually we keep...
Maybe you could guess what that film is.
Yeah. And usually, you know, we do a spoiler countdown to if there's dong being revealed in this film. But it's all over the place. Two dongs.
Yeah. There's two dongs. There's a surprise dog in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be a spoiler to give that one away.
So we won't give that.
And it's not a spoiler saying 28 inches. I haven't measured Samson. And if you've seen 28 years later, you already know that there's a huge dog.
Yeah, huge eyeball there.
So there you go. So this is 28 years later, Bone Temple, the sequel. Not directed by Danny Boyle, but directed by Nia DaCosta.
Yeah.
So he's handed over the reins. And these two films were also shot back to back. So they were filming them both at the same time. So two directors doing, you know, a first and a sequel at the same time in an interesting kind of way there.
Yeah, and it was quite odd watching a horror sequel so close to the other one being released.
Yeah.
I think 28 years later maybe came out in May. I'm trying to remember. All I remember is we had a power cut and we recorded it in the darkness. So we have done that if people want to go check it out. But it feels like it hasn't really been a long gap between films.
No, well, the weird thing is, it's now the question is how long you wait till the next one. It feels like you're getting these two thick and fast, and then they haven't even made the next one yet because they were waiting to see how these two did. So it's interesting that you're like, we've got two back to back, and now we're gonna have to possibly wait ages for what maybe the final part.
And I feel like this was an interesting film. There was a lot of buzz going into it, a lot of hype around the film in general, around kind of Nia DaCosta taking the reins.
It's hard not to get drawn in by that buzz as well. Like I was trying to temper my expectations, because if you think it's the great, like literally, like when people start like throwing around like best in the franchise and this is the Dark Knight of the 28 years, like literally someone literally did that. Everyone goes to the Dark Knight as the superior, like the sequel that is above, or the Godfather Part 2. When you start throwing things out like that, people start to expect some great grand thing, which is, to be fair, is not what this franchise is anyway. No. These are not like films that, like, one thing that I think tempered the expectation, obviously straight away in my head, was obviously, you know, and although we're not doing spoilers for this film, the last film is on the table.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen 28 Years Later, go and watch that and come back. We did an episode on it sometime last year. We can't remember when. No. Maybe. Maybe May. So I think the only thing with this film straight away in my mind was that I was trying to temper the fact that I feel like there was a lot of stuff with the first one where people were like, it was really a slow burn and stuff like that. In my mind, I felt like a lot of people had not revisited 28 Days Later, which is actually a much slower burn than people ever give it credit for, but does still have some big, you know, zombie-based action scenes. Or a lot of people were thinking of 28 Weeks Later, which, let's be honest, has mainly been just erased. I feel like there was a mention in 28 Years Later about like something happened in Europe but they managed to push back from it or whatever. So that's about as far as that legacies goes. Like that one's not really being counted in here, but that one was way more Americanized, action heavy. So when you have a director like Nia DaCosta come in, an American director, you go, are we going to get a bit of a major change in tone, a major kind of, suddenly it's going to be way more action-packed, way more thing. And there are some changes in tones here, but it still feels very much like the first one.
Yeah, it feels like it's very much
when I say the first one, I keep saying that. The 28 Years Later, the first one of this new trilogy, not 28 Days Later, although I think they both have good connections to the original film.
It does feel like it's very connected. I feel like the humour of this film landed a lot better than in the first part of 28 Years Later.
I don't remember that much humour, to be honest.
There was, and it was really odd place. There was the bit with the Swedish like police officer, mercenary guy, and there was some weird humour just randomly injected that for me felt quite out of place. Whereas a lot of the humour in this comes from two main characters, and the performances of them are great. Yeah, and I feel like the humour suits the characters as opposed to it being what felt more like wedged in humour.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, there's one thing about this one is, like, compared to the first one. Now, I really liked the first one. The 28 years later, I really enjoyed it. Upon rewatching it, I really enjoyed it again. As what it is, a slow build that kind of had a lot of little world building bits that kind of had to be almost set into place. This is not like a sequel where I think you could just walk in and just see it and not have seen the first one. I do think there's a lot of like stuff, especially with say the Spike character, for instance, that would be really lost without it, and even with Ralph Fiennes, Dr.
Ian.
Ian. I'm just trying to remember the last Howsam or something like that. There's a lot that would be lost. Like, this doesn't feel like, it's not like the first one was. It could be a standalone. Like, the first one could have been a bit more standalone. This one is very much needs to have. I feel a need to follow on from where it is. But a lot of the stuff that was built in the last one almost allows this one to kind of go, we can just tell just these two character stories instead of feeling like they had to tell like one part of a story and then another part to build up for the sequel. Like, it now looks, when you look back, that the first one was very much kind of building up to especially one character, which is Ralph Fiennes, his character, doctor character, and obviously they didn't spend much time. They're the divisive Jimmies that we got at the end of that one, which is an interesting part, I think, for people with this, because it's one of those things that was a major, like, you fucked it in the last 5 minutes, Danny Boyle.
Yeah, it was odd, and I'm still unsure about it. Like, one of my things is, I thought Jack O'Connell was great.
Jack O'Connell is great.
He reminds me of Stephen Graham, you know, where you watch him in something which is quintessentially British. You know, you saw Stephen Graham in it's escaped my head now. Another Danny Boyle. This is England.
I was going to say This is England, and I was like, no.
Yeah, it's just skipped my head. But he was fantastic in that.
Yeah.
And then you saw Jack O'Connell as Cook in Skins, for those who remember. And you'll think that these guys are going to go somewhere, and they've gone to incredible places.
Yeah.
And his performance was amazing, and I thought his character was good. I found myself, and I don't know whether you had this, I was quite roller coaster with the film. I was really into it at points, and then I thought it definitely struggled a little bit from kind of second part syndrome, but then it also felt, at times it felt almost kind of too disconnected. You know, I'll go more into that in the spoiler filled episode, which is a hook for people to subscribe and make sure they get it when it comes out. I
mean, for the spoiler-based one, this is definitely one where it has a lot of things, including the ending, which not going to really talk about. But I will say that it ends this one with a connection, obviously, that has a lot less like build-up connecting from these first two films than I expected to have. I expected a lot of things to be on the table at the end of this one that are not really there by the next one. But I don't actually even know necessarily what the main like story will be for the next one, which is good in a way.
It is, but it also, that's one of my that's something that detracts from this film.
Yeah,
is there's one very clear plot point of what's got to step into the next film. Very clear to anybody who does go and watch it. But then I find myself thinking, in terms of a trilogy, like the rest of this story, kind of, it's fun to watch and it's good and it's gory and it's well acted and it's well shot, but it also does feel like you could cut out most of it, which does feel a bit unfortunate to me. Like I want to talk more because I'm being very vague, but I'm avoiding the spoilers.
Yeah. So the parts that we can is mainly characters, maybe gore levels, things like that we can talk about and how it continues on from there. We do have, so we've already talked Jack O'Connell, and I loved his performance. I thought he was great. For someone who is, again, from the last film, coming in with someone who's like, what the fuck is this going to be?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I will say something from the last film, which I was very glad that it was not a continuation, which is, actually, upon rewatch of 28 Years Later was slightly actually my problem. The scene at the end in 28 Years Later, when they all appear on the cliff and, they start, and they say, can we join in? Yeah, the Jimmy Savile thing's a thing, but, I kind of got past that kind of part. I don't necessarily know exactly. I still don't really know exactly why it's specifically dressed that way.
Yeah, I know.
There you go. That's more thing. That's not really a spoiler. I'm just more saying if your main focus in this film is I want to know why they're Jimmy Savile. I don't know. I still don't know why.
Well, we can talk about that.
We can talk about that why, but
I have some theories.
I have theories as well as to why, but I don't want to go into that.
Yeah.
But nothing is this is why I am this is dressed like this.
Yeah.
But one of the things that are kind of more bugged me, the only thing that really bugged me about the final scene of the last one wasn't even the way they dressed it, wasn't the tracksuits, it wasn't a thing. There's only one part of it that really got to me, and that was the fact that they were jumping around like they were Power Rangers.
Yeah.
And thankfully, they don't really do that. There's some moves in this one, but the Jimmys and the Fingers characters that we get to meet in this one, it's not like Go Power Ranger jumping around, blitzing around like that. It doesn't really play out quite that over the top way that it's meant to. Luckily, when you actually get to know them, they're actually slightly more, I'm not saying understandable, but they feel a little bit more grounded than I think that final scene made them seem. It seemed like we were going in a completely balls to the wall way. And I'm not saying there's not some bonkers stuff in there. There is some stuff in here. If you didn't like the slow burn of the first one, or you really hated that final scene, this film is not going to change your mind on this. It's still kind of the same thing. But what it does have is some scenes that, again, I'd say slightly are making you test, how much can you get into, why a character's dancing around with someone, or things like that, to be very vague. Why we're getting a lot of musical dance scenes and things like that. It'll make you question. A lot of those things, actually, I really enjoyed in this film.
Same.
But there's a lot of people, and I'm thinking not so much I think there's maybe quite a British audience that will get this. Other countries, I'm not so sure that some other countries will be like, what the fuck? I'm here to see Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're still not getting that, guys.
No.
There are some infected scenes and there are some violent scenes, and there's a good level of gore and violence, maybe not. Again, one of those things to kind of push for people that are seeing a lot of marketing and stuff is there's a lot of stuff out there making it sound like this is going to be a really full-on graphic, and I don't know, it is where we are now, but I still don't think that this was majorly full-on gore all the time.
No.
And that's what some of the reviews out there, so I'd say watch out for what your expectations are of that stuff.
It's more, there were tense scenes and there were gory scenes, and there's a couple of jump scares that got me, that really got me. But it never kind of leans into being kind of fully horror. Don't expect to go into it thinking, I'm going to be scared. There's a lot more characters in it.
And I kind of don't think, even going back to 28 Days Later, I think that's one of these things with this whole franchise, is that people seem to just put it into that box of the zombie horror, and that's what it is. And it isn't, even in 28 Days Later, it was never that. It was about the human characters in the story and what they went on. There was more zombie action in that one, but what I mean is there's also huge long scenes of them getting to know the characters. No part of that, and even the third act in that one includes a lot of violence and kind of more actiony bits in 28 Days Later, but it's not fully just they're coming at you, go on, all of the time. And yes, these ones I'd say are a little bit less than those ones. But then there are some scenes that are extremely tense in this scene that are quite violent, where it's scary in a different way. It's scary in a what can people do kind of way, which for some people can be scarier than the rage monsters coming after you.
Yeah, definitely. And I liked the performance of Samson. When I heard that he was going to be kind of a more sensual character, I was thinking what the fuck?
Yeah, how's that going to work?
But I liked the introduction. I liked the story with Dr. Ian Malcolm. I'm just going to call him Ian Malcolm. And I liked the kind of the weird character arc and where it's going to leave the next installment. That's what
in my head, this was, if I was to compare it to within the same kind of genre in my head, the first one was Night of the Living Dead. Slow burn, kind of emotional at times with a kind of traumatic ending kind of thing. That was Night of the Living Dead. This one's Day of the Dead. This is like, we're not the action necessary, but we're kind of learning more about them. There's a little bit more understanding of them. There's something that might be bubbling under the surface, and there's also like a weird kind of what the human's going to do element to it.
Yeah.
Like that was in my head of like those things. And I'm not saying it is either of those films, by the way. I'm just saying in my head, thematically, those are the closest you could link to in the zombie genre, because these are very much their own beasts.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think these... which is a good thing, to be fair, because... One thing I remember us saying when we did 28 Days Later, and before we'd seen 28 Years Later, and before we'd seen this one, is how in the world of like Walking Dead and stuff like that do you make stuff that feels still somewhat like it is actually something different? And I do think that they've pulled that off. This doesn't feel like The Walking Dead, and yes, you've got human antagonists and things like that, but there's enough kind of strangeness and beautiful cinematography and like interesting shots and interesting character based stuff that doesn't feel like it's another zombie film that you could point out in the same way for me.
It feels a little Last of Us, you know. A lot of it feels a lot of Last of Us to me, is with the bow and arrows and the spears and the kind of like humans straggling alongside.
Yeah, I mean that's a natural progression of like not having guns and stuff. Though, isn't it? Well, in the UK, that's not like it's not like we have a gun store in every corner either.
Yeah, we just have bows and arrows.
Well, we'd have to do some kind of tools, I guess. And like I get that comparison, but it's not like it's not completely exact the same. But Last of Us, that's because it felt quite realistic in its approach. I guess
it kind of goes. I guess what I'm more going for is it goes for that grounded element, maybe focusing a bit more on the human aspect of it, as opposed to there's a rage virus running around and we're seeing all of that. That's what I was worried about with it being a bit more potentially Americanized. Yeah. And the only film with Nia DaCosta I've seen is her Candyman, which we covered, which I did enjoy. So I don't know. I had that skepticism that they might be like, all right, people liked the action. Yeah. Let's get more in. Let's get more of those CG ideas.
I mean, I do believe that she's quoted as saying that the only thing when she read the script was she really liked the script. She was literally going to have to do back to back of one film to another, so she wasn't going to do this film. And then she really loved Alex Garland's script for it and likes the idea of it being so different. And also apparently with Candyman, and she also did the Marvel film. Yeah. She hadn't had a finished script for either of them, so she was like, this is actually a completed script that I can actually work off of, which seems to be less and less true nowadays. The only thing she asked Alex Garland for was more infected.
Really?
Yeah, so there's more infected scenes in the film because she did ask for more infected, because she felt that there was just a lack of like infected presence. Yeah. Which is what, to be fair, what some people put on to 28 Years Later as well, but these were filmed back to back, so she didn't see that criticism before like that. Yeah. But it does have them spattered throughout. It still doesn't necessarily feel like the infected anymore of this one are the threat that we're looking at, really. No. It's more about how they live and how they get there. The infected are kind of just a pain in the ass that they just have to be quiet walking around. So it doesn't get. I do like that there are things like with the infected from the last one to this one. I do like the fact that we do seem to have, you know, a much more of like that semblance of like the packs of them and stuff like that. Like one makes a noise and the scream goes out. You know, we did have that in the other one, but some of that wasn't really like explored to that much length. It was just kind of like, shit, they're chasing us again. Get down the road, kind of thing. So there is those kind of interesting like character arcs and moments, you know, and we still are seeing it through mainly the eyes of Spike. You know, most of it, and through.
Why? I named him Spike. I forgot that his name was Spike, and I was like, it's Sam. Yeah, that's a rational name for a human to have. And then a character says it, and I'm like, oh yeah, his name's fucking Spike.
I was going to say more like a Geordie thing, but I don't know any Spikes.
No, of course you don't.
No. It sounds more Americanized, if I'm honest. Spike, so it doesn't sound like a British name.
The only person called Spike is the vampire in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah.
I've never met a Spike. I've never seen a Spike who hasn't named themselves Spike.
I mean, there's a lot of 90s influence in all of this franchise, to be fair, so maybe that's where it came from. I mean, Spike was a pretty badass character, to be fair. Not the one in this film, I mean Spike in Buffy.
Yeah. Blonde hair, leather jacket.
And there's a lot, like, just talking about the 90s, a lot of where that stuff, this is kind of that kind of idea of the, end of the 90s to 2000s, that everything has kind of been stuck.
Yeah.
The whole world, well, not the whole world, but apparently the whole of Britain has just been stuck in this, like, element of time where the world ended around the start of 2000 to 2002, and that's it. That's all they know. And that does play a little bit into, like, some of the things you see with, the Jimmies in this film, which is a little bit in there. I'm just trying to fit with those parts with... So, we've got some gore levels, some, to be kind of vague, some face rip kind of stuff and stuff like that in there. We've got two key, like, Jack O'Connell and Ralph Fiennes' performances are... I pretty much enjoyed everything they did in this film. I thought was great. Yeah, it felt like something different from, not the normal that we get. Ralph Fiennes looked like he was really enjoying getting to do this, and Jack O'Connell also seems like he's just in this element getting to be this psychopath, basically. Yeah. And a lot of basically the whole majority of the whole cast actually are doing a really good job here. I think it's hard for us to talk about certain things because we're basically just giving away the plot, because it's not like this is like this is very much like follow those characters on a journey, and then they'll reveal things, and every one of those reveals is technically spoiling something for you. Of course. It does have, just to say about what it does, one thing that I will say is, to go into this, is I feel like 28 the franchise is known for a really standout kind of an opening. Maybe like the last one was set in the Teletubbies and like set in the church. The original film obviously has quite kind of impactful. They and obviously even that's one area that 28 weeks later is fantastic, is the opening. Yeah. The only one thing I will say is that it doesn't have that like straight in like shit, here's the infected like kind of opening that the other films had. This one has a kind of, and this is where we pick up from the last film kind of opening, which is one thing I would say is I thought we were gonna get another kind of, I don't know, whether it's a flashback to a character, whether it's something like that kind of opening. That's one thing I will say going expectations wise, is you're not getting that kind of infected opening that I feel like all the other ones have.
I don't think we'll get it in the next one either.
Probably not, no, because I think we're just going to pick straight up.
Yeah, I think we'll just pick straight.
From
no, that's too much of a spoiler. That's too much of a
whatever
spoiler.
You were going to say.
Yeah, whatever I was going to say.
I left it as just, it'll pick up from wherever it ends. Is nothing else.
Yeah. And I was going to make a joke, which
is a spoiler.
Which is a spoiler.
Bring it back in the next one.
Yeah, bring it back in the next.
In the spoiler episode. Yeah. But yeah, so generally, for me, I personally really enjoyed the like emotional, thematic, very much kind of hit like the last one. I felt had a very thematic balance to it. It played out in a way. Not everyone loved the kind of part of the third act and stuff like that. I mainly, upon rewatch, really enjoyed that. So for this one, going into it being very much about these two characters, I really liked this because it's in it still feels kind of different. It felt a little bit more willing to have a bit more fun with it. I think the first one is quite like kind of, it's not necessarily what we'd call a fun film. Yeah. It's quite a kind of about mother and father and toxic masculinity and all those kind of things were thrown in the first one. This one I didn't feel has so much of a thematic balance to it. I felt the first one had much more of a deeper theme running under it, and a much more of a Danny Boyle style, and Nia DaCosta has said she didn't want to make a Danny Boyle film, so that's absolutely fine. There was a little part of me that was missing a little bit of the Danny Boyle-ish like thematics and cinematography that maybe was a bigger hitter in the first one for me than in this one. But I do think that this story is interesting, even if it didn't play out quite the way I was expecting. I can't really go into that without spoilers. Yeah. There's something in the third act where I expect it to maybe go in a different way than it goes, which is true of any film because you don't know what's going to happen. But I don't know. Maybe I'm expecting it to ever, let's just say, things to come to a bigger head than they necessarily do. Is where I leave that as a kind of thing. But I did enjoy this film. I would tell people to go and see this, definitely.
Yeah, go check it out. And I think that's the kind of the sum up. I want to talk about spoilers. So. Yeah. If you've seen the film, come and let us know your thoughts. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CMTH Podcast. If you know a Spike or you are called Spike, come and let us know. Remember to hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review. As always, play us out, fellas.